Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hello and welcome back to the show. Menopause brings about a change in hormones in midlife, and it is primarily associated with hot flashes and night sweats. But increasingly discussed are the forgetfulness, anxiety, insomnia, and more that plague the days of a woman's middle age. So, in this episode, we'll be taking a look at these challenges and discussing ways to wade through this stage of life with grace and cognitive acuity. And joining us in this conversation today is clinical neuropsychologist Caroline Gurvich. Impressively, she's also an associate professor at Monash University and the deputy director of the Her Centre Australia. So welcome to the show, Caroline. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Marie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about your research and what it entails.
Sure. So my research in this area, I'm really interested in the neuropsychology of women's mental health. So kind of the intersection between hormones and different lifestyles where hormones change and what happens in terms of neuropsychology, which is the brain-behavior relationships or cognition, different thinking skills. So I've got different research projects that look at what happens to cognition during menopause. A lot of women talk about this idea of brain fog. So I've got research studies that explore what that is in terms of people's subjective experience and how that maps out onto more objective neuropsychological tasks. I'm also really interested in how neurodivergence and ADHD manifests or intersects with menopause. That's an area that's just emerging a lot. And clinically, I see a lot of women who are presenting to me for clinical opinions about what's happening to their cognition around menopausal years, concerned about Alzheimer's disease or questioning ADHD. So my research is really trying to explore that field in a bit more detail and help us better understand what happens to cognition and what the association is between different things that might be happening in people's lives and their cognition during menopause transition years.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. I feel like this area of research definitely needs more saturation.
Yes. It's certainly something that's emerged a lot over recent years. I know when I studied, which was quite a while ago now, we didn't talk about the idea of brain fog. It didn't exist. It wasn't a concept during menopause. And it's something that the popular media seems to have picked up on. And now more and more people are talking about it and more people are presenting with and questioning what's happening to their cognition. And we want to ensure that people can thrive during this phase of their life and do their best and not sit there silently and suffer and get anxious and have impacts on their self-esteem because they feel like they can't think clearly.
Yeah, that's so important as well because previously, without the research, a lot of the cognitive changes throughout menopause was it didn't have much validity to it because there wasn't that research backing it up. So it's wonderful to have you do this. And tell us a bit about Her Centre Australia. What do they do?
So broadly, our research centre is for women's mental health. So the HER stands for Health, Education and Research. So we strive to better understand different things related to women's mental health. So looking at hormone-related changes, so women across the menstrual cycle and premenstrual mood disorders that some people experience, better understanding sex differences in a whole range of mental health and mental illnesses, understanding menopause. So really focusing on women's mental health and trying to kind of optimize treatment, better characterize different things with a framework of focusing on women's mental health.
Yeah, well, I can tell you as a young woman, that is what I like to hear. So thank you for sharing that with us. That serves as a great preface for our topic for today. But before we go further into detail, I would love to get to know you better. So this is Have You Met Caroline? And my first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
So I love just kind of hanging out with my family and with friends. I love walking, running, being outside, cooking. Like I love cooking with my daughter and sharing meals with family and extended family, going out for meals. So lots of things, but yeah, I guess I kind of come back to kind of eating, exercising, and being with people who I enjoy spending my time with.
Oh, that is so wholesome. And you don't find that having someone else in the kitchen is stressful at all?
Um, Sometimes, yes, there is a bit of both, but no, generally not. Generally, I like to have help. And my daughter's, I've got three children, but one of them in particular is really keen on cooking, and she does a great job. So no, it's a help, not a hindrance. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Oh, that is so sweet and really, really nice because my partner's a great cook as well. But for some reason, I just can't like multitask. Like if I'm cooking, I'm cooking and I have my thoughts in my head and having to like translate them to someone else is a huge stress on me. So, yeah, but maybe I should try that sometimes. What advice do you have for cooking with somebody else in the kitchen?
Well, one, coming back to your point about multitasking, Marie, it's a myth. It doesn't really happen. We're just switching our attention between competing demands. So I think the key is just to have fun and not to stress about the outcome. So sometimes we have lots of mishaps, and that's okay. It's not
Yeah.
always perfect. And sometimes it's competitive, like I'll bake something and she'll bake something, and it's like, whose is better? It's generally not me. But that's okay. So it's about being okay with it not being perfect and just having fun with it. And yeah, that's my advice. Just
Yeah.
enjoying the process of cooking, not worrying about so much about the outcome.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely something that I've got to learn. I'm trying to to be a bit more familiar with with the idea of not panicking when things
Yeah.
seem to go awry.
Yes. Plenty. I've got plenty of those stories as well, where things have gone awry, or you're cooking and then you get distracted and then you forget and things burn, but that's okay. That's all part of it, and you just have to throw it out and start again.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you like to cook the most? Are there any favorite dishes that you like to go
Um,
back to?
I'm personally a big fan of any kind of veggie fish type dishes, but that
Mhm,
doesn't really extend to the rest of the family. The
mhm,
kids are probably more into pasta. My
mhm.
son loves meat. So we tend to have a mixture of meals going on, which can be slightly annoying and potentially overwhelming at times because we don't necessarily all like the same kind of things. And so sometimes just going out for dinner is also a nice option. And I do like to bake occasionally as well. So um,
Yeah.
sweet stuff.
Yeah, baking is actually really, really fun.
Mm,
Yeah. And also the other point is like with baking, the joy of it partially is like getting to share the food with other people as well. It's a bit easier to keep and to like bring into the office or like gift a few to some friends.
yeah, exactly. And sharing meals. Like I've sort of grown up in a family where we always have big family meals, and so it's something I've always had and I do really value.
Yeah. And is there anyone either in your professional life or your personal life that you look up to?
Um, yeah, plenty of people. In my professional life, the director of our research centre and all my colleagues, they all share different aspects of wisdom, as well as PhD students that I work with. I learn from everyone, and same with my personal life. Like really, everyone around me, I always kind of learn things and look up to people for all different reasons. I probably don't have any kind of celebrity role models, but just real people in my life.
Yeah, that's what I found like increasingly as I've grown older as well. Because as a kid, I did look up to celebrities in some form, not exclusively celebrities, but as I grow older, I realize like celebrity, you don't really know what's going on in a celebrity's life or how they actually are in person. You can look up to, certain attributes that they seem to display, but nothing else. But a lot of the qualities that you find in celebrities that you initially would look up to, you can easily find in other people surrounding you as well. And there's a lot of fulfillment there in having those traits that you admire about the people around you. So what kind of traits do you tend to find admirable?
It's a good question. I think just enthusiasm in people. I really feed off other people's enthusiasm. I love to see anyone being enthusiastic about whatever it is in their life. So I think that's always inspiring, even if it's something that I'm not enthusiastic about. I just think enthusiasm is such a great trait and something I definitely look up to. And in that frame of mind, like passion, anyone who is really keen on something. I don't love like laziness like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't inspire me. So I think anyone who's got drive, enthusiasm, passion, I find all of those things inspiring.
Yeah, for sure. I have to agree. Although I will say that I do sometimes look up to people who can like have the ability to dial it down a notch if they wish to, which I wouldn't call laziness by any means, but it's more of just like the ability to stay calm and to like know when to relax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do agree with that. I think that's important. Balance is important. Sorry, it's not that I
No, that wasn't
dislike people who rest or relax. I think that's very important. Self-care, all important. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I wasn't implying that at all, but it was just like a thought that was kind of adjacent to it. But yeah, so my last question for you before we end off this section, has there been a course that you've taken in your lifetime, be it university or like some other upskilling course that has inspired you and stuck with you to this day?
Probably my original doctorate of neuropsychology that was many years ago, but I really got so much out of that course. So it was a course that provided a mixture over 3.5 years of research, clinical placement. So we went around different hospitals and learnt on in placements as well as coursework. So it was a really busy but well-rounded course, and we learnt from so many different neuropsychologists and professionals. And I just found that course really inspiring. We were a small cohort. There was only 6 of us, so it was really nice working with the same people for 3.5 years. So that's probably still stuck with me and inspired me in terms of my career, but I don't think anything's kind of matched that I've done since.
Yeah. And what were the biggest lessons that you've learned from that?
I think to keep an open mind, to keep learning. I think particularly as an academic, we're constantly researching, learning, and keeping an open mind about what might come next and where our own research might go, as well as the field more broadly. So I think, yeah, just being open-minded, broad-minded, and being able to read widely in the field so we can be aware of everything that's going on as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Caroline. It's been such a delight to get to know you. Now, let's jump into the interview. And to start, what would you say your definition of longevity is?
So I think it's being able to live a long, healthy, happy life. So I think just as simple as that, health and happiness for
Yeah.
a long period.
Yeah. And how would you define cognitive health? How do you think that contributes to longevity?
Yeah, so cognitive health is about being able to think clearly and optimize our thinking skills, which includes our memory, our ability to focus, our ability to learn new information, to problem solve, decision make, control our emotions. So lots of different aspects are under the umbrella term of cognition. And being healthy in all of those different thinking skills is really important to equal a happy and satisfying and fulfilling life long life, our cognition is also very closely related to our physical health. So I think, being sure that we can maintain everything that is recommended to be physically healthy is also going to have an impact on maintaining our brain health and maintaining our cognitive health.
Yeah. And from what the research shows so far, what are the typical cognitive changes experienced by women during menopause?
Yeah, so as anyone gets older, regardless of whether they're someone who goes to an individual who has menopause or not, our thinking skills change. So we become more wise. So we have more wisdom. So there's some benefits as we get older, but we might not be able to juggle as much in our what we call our working memory, how much we can hold in our mind. We might not be able to attend to as much. We might not be able to process things and react as quickly. So we might be slightly slower, but we might be wiser. So that happens to everyone as part of natural, healthy cognitive aging. During menopause, which is midlife for most people around the age of 50, but the hormonal changes that accompany menopause can span sort of 10 years before someone reaches menopause. That time frame for some people can be associated with this experience of what people describe as brain fog. It's a subjective experience that people have, and they talk about difficulties retrieving words, forgetfulness, difficulties multitasking, difficulties making decisions, and this kind of foggy thinking. So it doesn't happen to everyone during menopause, but for some people, they experience this brain fog. And the literature would suggest about 2/3 of women experience brain fog during the menopause transition. And for some people, this is subtle and doesn't have an impact on their life. But for other people, it can have a significant impact. It can be really anxiety provoking. So people become concerned that they think they've got dementia, the early stages of dementia, or they think menopause might be uncovering an ADHD that's always been there, or it might be having an impact on their self-esteem. That's a big one for a lot of people. Might be having an impact on their work, on their home life. So the experience of brain fog can be a huge range from very subtle to having quite a significant impact.
Yeah. And how did these cognitive changes experienced during menopause differ from normal age related cognitive decline?
All right. So cognitive changes during menopause are subtle cognitive changes when we measure it in an objective sense. So if we do neuropsychological assessment on people, if there is a change, it's generally subtle. It might be a change in people's verbal learning, so how efficiently they can learn and recall new information that they've heard. But it's a subtle change, and people still generally perform in normal limits. So that's similar to cognitive healthy aging. There's not a significant decline in a lot of areas. This contrasts to someone who might be experiencing something called mild cognitive impairment, which is where there is an objective decline in someone's cognitive performance. So we have sort of cognitive healthy aging, and that's, as I said earlier, that could be a slight, really slow decline over time in how quickly you can process information or how much you can juggle in your mind. At the same time, you're acquiring knowledge, acquiring wisdom. And then you have, for some people during menopause, this kind of fogginess in thinking, perhaps a slight subtle decline in their learning efficiency if we measure it objectively. And then this is different again from someone who actually has a mild cognitive impairment, which is where we do actually see a decline in one area of cognition. And that is sometimes, for some people, the precursor to developing a dementia later in life. So it's more subtle than a cognitive impairment, but it's a slight difference to what might be expected with healthy cognitive aging, where you might not experience that kind of fogginess on a recurrent basis. Like we all have different days where we feel a bit foggy in our thinking or forgetful. That's very normal and part of healthy cognitive aging to have that from time to time. But from research, we see that for many women during menopause, this happens more than you'd expect for when compared to either midlife males or compared to women who are either premenopausal or postmenopausal. So you see this peak in kind of everyday forgetfulness or difficulties with attention or brain fog. So there is an increase in that experience of brain fog during the perimenopausal and early postmenopausal years that seems to resolve later postmenopause. And yeah, so more than healthy cognitive aging, so more brain fog, but more subtle cognitive changes when you compare it to someone who has a cognitive impairment.
Right. And what is it about menopause that affects the brain function and cognitive performance?
So we're still learning the answer to that question, and there's a number of different theories as to why someone might be experiencing brain fog and cognitive symptoms during menopause. So one of the leading contributors is likely to be the hormone changes. So menopause is associated with changes in our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, and in our perimenopausal years, the lead up to menopause, people experience fluctuating levels of this estrogen called estradiol, and it gradually declines at menopause. And so we know from animal studies that estrogen is supposed to have really good neuroprotective effects on the brain. So it's supposed to protect our neurons and do good things for our brain. And when this fluctuates and declines, that provides a theory or rationale as to why we might see changes in our cognition. We also know from animal studies that we have estrogen receptors. So these are little receptors in the brain that respond to estrogen, and they're located in the brain in areas that are really important for our thinking skills. So in the front part of our brain, which is really important for things like decision making, problem solving, focusing our attention, regulating our emotions, as well as in another part of our brain called the hippocampus, which is really important for memory. So these parts of the brain have lots of estrogen receptors. So when we think about the fact that our estrogen levels are fluctuating and gradually declining, these parts of the brain aren't stimulated in the same way from this particular hormone. So that is why we think estrogen is playing a key role in the cognitive symptoms that someone might be experiencing. But in addition to that, there's also a whole range of symptoms that people may experience during menopause. So these might include vasomotor symptoms, so hot flushes, night sweats. Some people experience pain, some people experience mood changes. Depression is quite common during menopause. And the other key symptom that a lot of people experience is sleep disturbance. So just in taking menopause out of the picture, if your sleep is disturbed, you get a bit foggy in your thinking. That happens to everyone. So that is another contributing factor. If you're depressed, your thinking can also be impacted. You can process information a bit slower or have trouble remembering or attending to things in your environment. So then if you're not attending, you're not sort of taking in new information, so you can't remember it later. So there's the hormone side of things, but then there's all the other menopause symptoms. And then even if we take menopause out of the picture, menopause happens in midlife. And this is just generally a really busy time for a lot of people. So a lot of people during these years are just stressed and stretched. So you might be at the peak of your career. Some people might be juggling teenage children, elderly parents, managing a household. So there might be lots going on in people's lives. So that in and of itself, that stress level sort of increases your mental load, and that might also impact people's cognition. So there are lots of contributing factors, and we're still learning which are the biggest contributors to the experience of brain fog.
Yeah, and to add to that as well, the middle age is one of those periods where for a lot of people it's transitional, and people get confused and perplexed about their direction in life as well. So that may also be a contributor.
Oh, absolutely. I think while some people might embrace menopause and that transition from sort of reproductive phase of life to being postmenopausal, and some people, might not experience any menopause symptoms and really thrive and embrace that time frame. For other people, as you say, Marie, it's a time where people might question, what they're doing or what's going on, and they might have a lot of sort of psychological thoughts and attitudes around aging that might also have a negative impact on sort of brain health, psychological health, cognitive health. So, yeah, there can be lots of factors that are really relevant for us to consider when people talk about experiencing brain fog.
This sounds a lot. This sounds a lot like pregnancy, where so many people thrive as a pregnant person, but then there's some who just like can't do it, like just want it to be over. Um, but and all experiences are valid.
Absolutely. They're all very unique and individual and different. And as you say, yes, absolutely valid. Everyone has their own journey.
Right. And how long does menopause usually last?
So, menopause itself is actually a single day in someone's life. So, menopause is defined as 12 months following someone's final menstrual period. So, that's one day. But the perimenopause, the kind of lead up, the hormone changes, the lead up to menopause, it's estimated to be sort of 4 to 10 years that there can be changes in menstrual cycle and in underlying hormone levels. And there can be a range of different symptoms that are experienced during the perimenopausal years. And then, as I said, 12 months after someone's final menstrual period, that's menopause. And then people enter their postmenopausal years after that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are there certain women who may be more susceptible to cognitive changes during menopause?
We don't really know who might be more likely to experience brain fog. We know that there are certain women who might be more prone to experiencing depression during menopause, and depression can be associated with brain fog. So we know that people who have had previous episodes of depression throughout their life, particularly hormone-mediated depression, so depression across the menstrual cycle or depression postnatally, so women who are sensitive to hormones and might have manifested as mood and depression changes previously might be more sensitive to the hormone changes that happen during menopause. So people who have experienced stress and early life trauma during their life, there's a theory that sort of dysregulates our whole hormone or endocrine axis, and some people who have experienced trauma and stress might be also more susceptible to and more sensitive to reproductive hormone changes that might happen during menopause. So we know that those two factors make people a bit more, place people at higher risk for depression. In terms of specifically brain fog, not specifically, we don't really know who might be more susceptible, but certainly factors like midlife stress is a contributor. And as I said, other menopause changes like sleep changes, depression, even vasomotor symptoms, those factors can contribute and make people at higher risk for experiencing brain fog. But on the other hand, brain fog can just happen to someone in the absence of all of those other symptoms. So it's not only a side effect of, lack of sleep or vasomotor symptoms like hot flushes. It can happen independently. So we're still learning who is more likely to experience brain fog during menopause transition, because it's not everyone.
And do we know if there's a way for women to mitigate the cognitive decline that they experience during menopause? Are there any lifestyle factors that may contribute to this?
There are. I think the very first thing is for people just to have an awareness that cognitive symptoms, that experience of brain fog, can be part of the perimenopausal years. So sometimes, because that perimenopause can happen for 10 years, sometimes people are in their early 40s and it might not be on their mind that they're experiencing brain fog that could be part of their menopause transition or hormonal changes. So I think the first thing is just to have an awareness that it could be related to menopause. And I think that's a really good starting point to validate women's experiences of brain fog and allow the conversation to happen with health professionals, so people can feel comfortable going to chat to their GP about this experience of brain fog. So then there can be flow-on conversations about whether menopausal hormone therapy might be an option for someone if they are experiencing brain fog. In terms of lifestyle factors, there's plenty of things people can do to really promote cognitive health and minimize the impact of brain fog. So they're all the same things that we hear about in terms of heart health and physical health. So exercise is crucial, and there's plenty of evidence for the importance of regular exercise. Sleep, sometimes it's easier to say get good sleep than it is for people to action that, but prioritizing sleep, understanding that sleep is really important. So that's another factor that's really important. Diet, there's plenty of evidence that diet is relevant. So having a kind of healthy, balanced diet, and the diet that keeps coming up in the literature as having the most evidence base for good cognitive and brain health is the Mediterranean diet. And the other one that is also important for cognitive health is being socially connected. So it's also important for people to prioritize socializing, which is a nice thing to say, no, it's important for my health, mental health, physical health, cognitive health, for me to, catch up with friends and spend time socializing. So that's a protective factor and a really important factor. So they're the lifestyle things. And then there's really practical solutions that people can implement if they're experiencing brain fog. So it's about kind of reducing your mental load. So if you're carrying lots of information in your head at any one time, it can be really hard to take in new information. So being able to just do like a brain dump, writing lists and trying to get information out of your head, breaking down tasks if things feel really overwhelming, thinking about how can you break down that task into a really small step that is achievable, trying to get people to email you things rather than shouting out a whole list of things you have to do and try and remember in your head. So either you can write them down, or you can, if you're in a work setting, and you can just ask people, hey, can you email me that information? And then it's in writing and you don't have to hold it in your head. So the practical things are really about trying to reduce your mental load, put things on paper, and sort of break up tasks so they're not overwhelming. And then making sure you really can focus and attend to new pieces of information, because that's going to help you remember it later.
Yeah, that's all really good advice. And I'm not sure why, but maybe it's just me, but I do tend to associate like sticky notes or post-it notes with middle-aged people, not in a not in an impolite sense or like a disrespectful sense, because I have post-it notes as well. And I find that during a brain dump or like getting everything out on paper and just having my sticky notes or things in my notepad, like my digital notepad, is just so much easier in my daily life as well to like function effectively and not forget things, because I am very forgetful. So it's interesting that this comes out in an episode about what most people would see as a middle age experience. Anyway, that's just a side note. But you did mention before about hormone therapy and how that could be a potential viable solution for the, I think, effects of menopause. So tell us a bit about that and what the advantages of seeking this therapy are and who would be more suitable for that.
So with menopausal hormone therapy, I think the jury's still out in terms of how much it can help brain fog and cognition, both in the short term as well as how we understand the association between menopausal hormone therapy and later life dementia risk or cognitive decline. But I think it's really important for people to have that conversation with their health professional and to weigh up their own risks and benefits of taking menopausal hormone therapy. At a kind of anecdotal individual level, I do see a lot of women who really feel like they improve from taking menopausal hormone therapy in terms of their brain fog and their cognition. So it's very much an individualized process, but I think it is definitely worth having the conversation with your health professional just to see whether it could be an option, and sort of monitoring and reflecting within your own self after taking menopausal hormone therapy for 12 weeks. Have you noticed a change in your brain fog, in your cognition, or sort of 3 months, 6 months, and talking to your GP about your own risks and benefits.
Right. And in general, what are some of the risks or advantages that tend to come up with hormone therapy?
So again, this is really individual. Like there are risks associated with stroke and cancer, and it's very much something that people need to discuss with their GP. But on the whole, and the Australian Menopause Society on their website, they'll talk about generally that the benefits might outweigh the risks, but it's definitely something that people need to discuss at an individual level, because every person is different and you need individual medical advice as to whether menopausal hormone therapy might be beneficial for you. At the moment, the guidelines don't allow people to prescribe menopausal hormone therapy specifically for brain fog or for cognition. And that's because we don't have enough evidence to show that it's beneficial at a big scale level. However, as I said before, like at an individual level, a lot of people do really feel like it helps clarity of thought and helps then boost their self-esteem. And there can be lots of benefits at an individual level, but definitely something to be discussed with each person and whoever their health provider is.
Yeah. And how would you describe the role of early intervention in addressing these cognitive changes during menopausal years, like with lifestyle factors as well?
Hmm. I think it's really important. Sadly, I do see women who have suffered from brain fog and not really made the connection that might be related to menopause and felt like within themselves they were declining in terms of their cognitive function. They weren't up to it at work, so they either reduced their role at work and stepped into a lesser role or left work altogether. And then there's this spiraling effect where it really impacts people's self-esteem.
Mhm.
And I think it takes some confidence, sadly, for people to bring it up with their GPs, because sometimes their health professionals might not ask them specifically about cognition or brain fog. But I think if that conversation happens early, then there is so much scope to help people make the most of their cognitive functioning. We know from our neuropsychological studies and tests that generally people don't decline at an objective level. So if someone's in a really structured setting, their memory is still able to function within normal limits on average. So it's not that people are experiencing a significant decline in their intellectual capacity or their cognitive skills, but more this day-to-day brain fog that people seem to be experiencing at a subjective level. So, I've talked about lots of lifestyles and practical strategies that might be helpful for people. But I think the very first step is just kind of recognizing that, this could be part of menopause and I should have a chat to my GP about it. And then from there, trying to work out what strategies might be helpful for that individual.
Yeah. And you mentioned before that with regards to the lifestyle factors, your usual suspects are are what you need to consider with like sleep and active lifestyle and diet. You mentioned the Mediterranean diet, but with the active lifestyle part of it, the exercise part of it, what's a good guideline for what what an appropriate amount of exercise is, because on the internet, active lifestyle can be defined in a myriad of ways, not just on the internet, probably in literature as well, but I haven't personally had a look, so I can't say. But I have seen that active lifestyle is defined by, let's say, 7,000 steps or 10,000 steps and above. I think active lifestyle, that low active lifestyle is 4,000 steps and above, and active lifestyle is 7,000 to 10,000. I'm not sure. I can't remember the exact numbers, but something along those lines. So, like, what metric should we be using for our exercise?
So I think a really good starting point is something is better than nothing. So if you're doing
Mhm,
no exercise, just start doing something. And that might
mhm,
just be going for a walk with a friend once a week. So just doing something is a really good starting point. And then the next step is more is better than a little. So the
mhm,
more you can build into your
mhm,
lifestyle, the better. So
mhm,
I think being too prescriptive about exercise isn't always helpful at an individual level. So some people might freak out by the thought of having to go to the gym or to go for a run, or so it's about finding a type of exercise that fits in with your lifestyle and that you can enjoy as well. And that is such an individual thing. So there is lots of literature about cardio exercise and about weight bearing being important as well. But in terms of balancing practical and what people actually do from what's the perfect recommendation, I think just do something and then gradually build that up. There are plenty of individuals I've met who have talked about at an individual level, just starting to walk every day, just even for 10 minutes, has a huge positive benefit on their mental health and on their cognitive health, on their reducing their foggy thinking. So I think, but if someone's already exercising a lot, cutting back to 10 minutes of walking a day is not going to be helpful for that person. So it's just about thinking about reflecting on your own lifestyle and thinking, okay, well, what can I fit in feasibly and what would I enjoy? And then trying to build on that and, trying to keep it balanced. If you can do a bit of cardio and a bit of weight bearing, that's perfect. But just doing something is better than nothing.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think this is actually a great time to go into practices and habits. So, what activities, exercises, or habits would you recommend for managing or like preventing the cognitive effects of menopause?
So I think the healthy lifestyle things are really important. So coming back to some exercise or regular exercise and healthy, balanced diet, good sleep, being socially connected. So those lifestyle things. And the other one that I didn't talk about that's also really important is minimizing stress. So that is also really individual and it can be different for everyone. So, some people find that meditation is really helpful, and there's so much literature talking about the benefits of meditation. But for some people, sitting and meditating is really irritating and not beneficial at an individual level. So it's figuring out how you can be mindful, being aware, being present within your own life. And some people kind of need movement in their meditative practice. So it might look like yoga, or it might look like surfing, and that you can be really mindful while you're doing that. So it's really individual as to how you have that self-care switch off time where you can just be really present and in the moment and not stressing or worrying about everything else that's going on inside your head and in your mental to-do list. So I think they're my kind of lifestyle things. And then, I've sort of talked about the practical things in terms of kind of reducing mental load and trying to just use lists and routines and calendars and breaking down tasks and those sorts of things.
Right. And some people do tend to live off of stress. There's like definitely that type of people. So for those type of people, what would you say is a good balance to have?
Yeah, so I think it's just checking in with yourself and noticing when you're getting too stressed and being able to say no to things when it's getting too much, whether that's work life or balancing home life. So it's being able to call on help if you need it, if you can, if you're in a position to call on other people for help, and just being able to check in with yourself and knowing when you need a bit of downtime and a bit of self-care time to try and minimize your stress levels and, be aware if things are occupying your mind and you're not able to focus on the present, that's not a good sign. So trying to address that and working out different ways for you to try and sort of minimize that stress. So you don't
Yeah.
get burnt out. I guess that's what we're getting. We don't want people to hit that point where they're burnt out. That's not good. So we want to get in early and for people to check in with themselves and just knowing, how much downtime, self-care time they need to be able to balance whatever competing demands they have in their life.
Yeah. And to end off, what advice do you have for incorporating all of these lifestyle factors into our lives in order to help us a little bit better during menopausal years?
Yeah, I think it's really about thinking about yourself and what you're going to enjoy, because I think giving people recommendations for things that are totally distant for them and not part of their regular life, people aren't going to implement them, and they're just recommendations to just sit there and don't get followed up on. So I think people need to really think about, okay, what can I incorporate in my life that I would enjoy? It's also, important to keep your brain active, and that doesn't mean going to do Sudokus if you hate Sudokus. That's not going to be helpful. It's about, being physically active and mentally active and socially active, but in a way that you enjoy. So it comes back to our original thing about kind of a longevity, being healthy and being happy. It's coming back to finding activities that you will enjoy that will promote that happiness, because we're always kind of aging and growing. And so it's finding things that will promote happiness in your life, but at the same time, ensuring that you're ticking the physical and mental health boxes with those happy activities. So not drinking lots of alcohol. That's not a helpful activity. Even if it made you happy, that's not a good recommendation. It's finding healthy activities that make you happy and engage your mind and your mental health in a positive way.
Yeah. Would you say engaging in hobbies is it falls under that? As long as, hobbies isn't alcohol.
Yes, absolutely. I think, that's a perfect example. So hobbies are perfect because they're things that you enjoy by definition. So yes, engaging with hobbies is ideal, and hobbies can be physical, they can be mental, they can be social. So yes, hobbies are a great way of ticking all of those boxes of being happy and engaged and promoting physical health, mental health, and cognitive or brain health.
Yeah, do some embroidery, learn some sewing, invite the girlies over, and do a crafternoon.
Yes, sounds perfect. As long as you like craft, perfect idea. Yes.
Yeah, as long as you like crafts. If you don't, then
if you
maybe don't do it.
Yes, if you're going to get angry and frustrated at trying to, thread a needle and do embroidery, it's not for you. But if it's something that makes you happy, go for it. It's a great idea.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with us today, Caroline. Now let's move on to the open mic section. This is your opportunity to talk about anything that you're passionate about. So the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you, Marie. I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the people reflecting on their cognition and the importance of being able to think in a kind of healthy, clear way and making the most of your thinking skills. Being able to direct your focus. Like we always think about our attention being stolen by different things and being so busy in life. But I think coming back to people being able to implement control over how they dedicate their attention and their focus. So coming back again to what makes you happy and what you want to spend time on. Every person has the power to be able to focus their own attention. So don't get lost in kind of doom scrolling on your phone for hours and then regret it later. Try and get in first and set up good, healthy habits so you can, really maximize your cognitive health and make the most of it and enjoy your life as much as you can. And on the flip side, the other thing is if you're struggling in terms of mental health, in terms of experiencing brain fog, and these strategies are not helpful because you're really struggling, it's important to seek help. There are lots of professionals who can help you. And if you're someone out there who's feeling like this is all too much and I can't think clearly or my mood is really not in a good place, go and speak to your health professional, your GP, and get some really good advice about how you can be helped and turn things around so you can function at your best.
That's great. That's a great use of the open mic. So thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us today. And if our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
So we have a website for Her Centre Australia. So I think you can put that in your show notes. That's probably a great starting place. Or I've got also Monash University researcher page, so I can give you those two links, and then people can have a look at the research that we do at our centre as well as the research I do as an individual or with my group.
Amazing. We'll link this in the show notes. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. You have been listening to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at longevity.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.